All right, so I think we can go ahead and get started. So I just wanted to thank you all for coming. My name is Liz Kirchhoff, and I'm an adult services librarian at the Barrington Area Library. And I wanted to take a moment to share a little bit of information with you. First, I want to tell you about a program that we have coming up that's tied really closely to this one that I thought maybe you might be interested in. So as many of you might know, the library just started a teaching garden in about March or so, and it's come in really, really beautifully. And we've got a mix of annuals and sort of native perennials that are just looking beautiful now. So we're going to be doing a seed saving workshop coming up in September. The date is September 18th. That's a Saturday, and it's from 11 to 1. And a lot of the seeds that we're going to collect that day will go to our seed library, which goes out in the fall, in February. But anything that we have left over, which we anticipate will be quite a lot, we'll be able to give away to you at that particular program. So do sign up. I've only got about 20 spots available still for it. So you can sign up right on our website. It's just balibrary.org, just the same place as you signed up for this. So a couple of really quick things about our program tonight. I'm going to ask you to all mute your microphones and keep them muted through our program. If you have any questions, just go ahead and add them to the chat box. We will save some time at the end for our presenter to field some of those. We will be recording the program, and we'll send out the link to that recording next week, along with some links that our presenter thought you might be interested to have. So now I'd like to go ahead and introduce Peggy Simonsen. Peggy's been a volunteer with the Citizens for Conservation for 16 years. She's a former president of CFC, and she continues to serve on the board of directors. Peggy is currently chair of the CFC's Community Education Committee. Peggy?
Hi, thanks, Liz. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad that you're joining us for the Chicago Living Corridors program this evening, hosted by the Barrington Area Library. Thank you for their support. We have a great program for you tonight, but before we do, I'd like to just give you a little bit of background about Chicago Living Corridors. Chicago Living Corridors is an umbrella group that is includes a number of organizations that I will talk with you about, but our mission is to focus on property and private ownership. We have a number of conservation organizations like the forest preserves that work on public land, but our focus is to identify, first of all, to help develop good habitat on private property, and then to map it. And on our website, chicagolivingcorridors.org, you will see this map that's interactive. I'll give you just a little bit of a background about it. I'm going to show you the numbers of organizations that are members of Chicago Living Corridors, but the colored dots indicate which organization has programs identifying good habitat on the private property is primarily people's yards. And so, for example, the green dots here are the Citizens for Conservation areas, and the red ones down here are the Conservation Foundation and so forth. If you go to the next slide, these are the organizations that founded Chicago Living Corridors, with the focus on having the organizations that have programs that help people individually build better habitat in their yards. So we don't have individuals as members, we have organizations as members. For example, Citizens for Conservation has the program of Habitat Corridors, which advises people on improving the habitat in their yards. The Wildflower Propagation and Preservation and I do this all the time. Preservation and Propagation Committee in McHenry County has a wonderful program of a natural garden in your yard, where they have mentors helping people improve the habitat. The Conservation Foundation here is the developer of the Conservation at Home program, which is used by a number of organizations, similarly with advisors coming out to help individuals build better habitat in their yards. Wild Ones groups, there's several different groups in the Wild Ones in the area, and they also have individual assessment or help programs. In addition to these founders, we now have additional participating organizations, all of whom help individuals improved habitat in their yards. The Forest Preserves of Cook County, for example, has the University of Illinois Extension, which is working with properties around the edges of the forest preserves to extend the value of the restorations that the forest preserves are doing, and helps the properties that butt up against them also have good native plants. The Audubon Society, for example, has a bird and butterfly sanctuary program. In the Land Conservancy of McHenry County, it's on the map with some of the dots, and then one for-profit organization, Red Stem Native Landscapes, which actually is a contractor that helps people build the good habitat in their yards. The ones with the dots on here are the ones that offer the Conservation at Home program. Others of us have our own programs, but all with the same mission of improving the habitat. But the Chicago Living Corridors is the group that is actually doing the mapping. So if you already have good habitat in your yard and would like to get your dot on the map, look at joining one of these organizations to do so. You can find lots more information on our website, chicagolivingcorridors.org. And in addition to the map, excuse me, on there are lots and lots of resources that you'll find helpful. And especially, we've been doing these programs almost monthly now since the pandemic began in June of 2020. And those have all been recorded thanks to our generous presenters, and they are accessible on the chicagolivingcorridors.org. So if you've missed some of them, or if you've seen them and you'd like to go back again and take a look at them, they're there under resources. So with that, here's what you can do on your own: plant natives or join one of these participating organizations to get your gardens on the map. Or if you'd like to volunteer with Chicago Living Corridors. And again, all of that information is accessible on the website, so I won't take more time here. But now I would like to introduce our speaker for tonight. We're having Native Plant Seeds 101. Sarah Mchale is the Community Engagement Specialist with the Land Conservancy of McHenry County, and has spent the last 20 years learning and working in the environmental field as an educator. She has personal and professional interest in sharing with others the functionality and joy that comes with incorporating native plants in any property. Sarah has had the opportunity to visit over 200 properties as part of the Land Conservancy's Conservation at Home program. She also really likes dogs, kids, reading, and insatiably researching just about anything. I think I need you, Sarah. Sarah will share tips and tricks on how to collect and sow your native plant seeds. She'll discuss basic seed identification, collection methods and timelines, and tips on how to sow. Our habitats need all the native plant help they can get, so utilize those seeds. And as Liz mentioned, if you have questions through the program, put them in the chat and we'll try to get them all answered at the end. And I'm so pleased now to be able to introduce Sarah.
Thanks so much, Peggy. And I appreciate everybody, all the groups involved, having me tonight. So we're just gonna dive right into it. Yep, my name is Sarah and I'm with the Land Conservancy of McHenry County. Tonight, we're gonna be talking about seeds. First, who are we? I'm just going to do this super quick. We're a nonprofit land trust located in McHenry County, about an hour northwest of Chicago. We like to preserve and take care of land and support landowners who want to do the same thing. We don't care if you live in like a tiny little neighborhood and have just a small little yard, or if you live on 100+ acres. We want to help you support and take care of your land. We do that through a bunch of different programs. I suggest you go to our website, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, all those pages. If you're not in McHenry County and you want to find your local land trust to see how they can support you, I suggest you go to a website called findalandtrust.org and type in your zip code and find them and connect with them. Okay, let's talk about seeds. I feel like seeds are this really overlooked resource that is this whole part of the life cycle of our gardens and our natural areas that sometimes we just don't pay attention to. And I don't care if you just have like 3 little native plants in your yards, they're going to make hundreds of seeds potentially. So let's talk about how to use them and why. Why do we even care about this in the first place? For one thing, it's super easy. This doesn't have to cost any money at all. This is a picture of my daughter on like the front sidewalk. She doesn't even have shoes on. She's just standing there with a paper bag and she's collecting seed, I think from prairie drop seed, which is a grass maybe. Super easy, okay? This like paper bag, that's all you need. Very budget friendly, very cheap to be able to do this, but it's extremely effective, all right? Whether you're doing this in a garden or whether you're doing this in a larger restored area, these seeds are thousands of tiny baby new plants. It's really educational when you start getting hands-on and physically touching your plants and smelling the seeds and just interacting with them. You learn all about the parts of your plants, the physiology of them, what kind of insects are living in them. So it's really educational as well. And it's really kind of almost meditative to be out seed collecting. It's really quiet. You hear the birds, you know, it's just really, it's not super hard. It doesn't take a ton of thought. It's just really kind of meditative almost. So it's a really fun thing to do. Before we dive into the specifics of like certain plants, I want to talk about the ethics of seed collecting from native plants. Now, first to begin, native plants are plants that have lived in a certain region for thousands of years, generally before settlement, without human intervention, okay? So they develop in certain communities. And when we are collecting seeds from those communities, whether it's your garden or whether it's out in a publicly owned natural area, there's some guidelines to follow. And you don't have to get super hung up on like the exact numbers here, but just know the idea. So when you're collecting seed, let's say it's from a perennial plant. So that's a plant that's going to come back every year from the same root system. We recommend that you eyeball it and only collect 30% of the available seed from each plant. You want to leave some seed for birds to eat. You want to leave some seed to be able to spread naturally, okay? Annuals, biennials, rare plants, we recommend you only collect around 10%. And again, you're just kind of eyeballing this, okay? You're not out there physically counting this stuff. If you are on public land or private land that is not owned by you, you are only allowed to collect with permission from the landowner. I don't care if it's the roadside. I don't care where it is. You have to have permission from the landowner in order to be able to do that. A lot of our conservation district sites and forest preserve sites have fantastic restored natural areas with a huge diversity of plants. And a lot of them depend on those seeds to restore other pieces of land, okay? So always have permission before collecting any seed and leave plenty for the wildlife. So this is a picture of my beautiful little niece. And one day we were over at my mom's house and she has this little patch of bloodroot and we found all the little seed pods and Isabel just kind of went to town and like collected every single seed pod. And when we realized that, see the little envelope down there in the left-hand corner, that's all the seeds. We were like, oh no, there's none left for the ants. So we put some seeds back. So Isabel learned right there about ethical seed collecting. All right, so what do you need in order to be able to collect seeds just like nothing fancy. Okay. These are things that you probably already have laying around your house. Really all you need are some paper bags. You know, I like, sometimes I'm fancy and I like paper bags of various sizes, maybe little lunch bag sizes for certain seeds, maybe grocery bag sizes for others. And then sometimes I'll get those big landscape waste paper bags for certain things. I'll talk about that. If you've got a pair of thin gloves, that can be helpful. Some of these seeds are pretty sharp. So that's the stuff on the left there, the gloves and the bag. That's really all you need. On the right, there's some optional things. There's a seed harvesting hook, which I use for all kinds of things, not just seed harvesting. That's that like orange handled sickle looking thing. That's pretty nice. You can order those from Prairie Moon Nursery. Or you can just use some scissors. The heavier duty, the better. Fiskars makes some nice ones. And then that white bag thing there down on the bottom right, that's a seed apron. I kind of want one of these. That's pretty cool. It's basically I think it's like a wax coated almost canvas bag, but it's attached to a belt that goes around your waist. So that's great, you know, because then your hands are free, which is really nice. But you know what, with those paper bags, those grocery bags, I like hook my arm sometimes through that handle and then my hands are free. But eventually I'm going to graduate to one of those aprons. Those are really cool. And then the pliers and the roll and the roller there, that's for processing, which we're going to talk about that later. Processing just means like removing the extra plant material from the seed itself. So you have to kind of beat the heck out of it sometimes, and those tools can help with that. And we'll talk more about that at the end. Okay, so let's dive into the certain types of plants. So these plants, these native plants, they all kind of fall into certain groups that share similar characteristics of how they disperse their seeds. So all the milkweeds all develop some kind of pod, and they're all going to be a little bit differently shaped depending on what species they are. And I get asked about this all the time. How and when do I collect my milkweed pods? And it's really like, how complicated do you want to get? You know, it's totally up to you. So first, let's talk about how do you know when it's ready or not. So if you look at that picture in the upper left corner there, there's one that says no in red and one that says yes in yellow. So the one that says no in red, if you look at that, you notice that the seeds are very light tan colored and they're connected to the white fluff stuff. Those are not ready to be collected yet. And that pod is really green still. If you look at the one where it says yes, that pod is starting to get a little brown, but the seeds, so that pod is probably starting to split open by itself. The seeds are dark chestnut brown. So if you're not sure if the pod is ready or not, and you want to check it before it starts to split on its own, you can kind of like stick your thumbnail in the little seam. You'll see where it is and just peek. You can just kind of peek at the seeds in there. And if they're not that dark chestnut brown, they're not ready to be collected yet. Some people get really into it and they don't want the pod to split and then like spew the white fluff all over the place. So they'll rubber band individual milkweed pods. I've never done this. I don't have the patience for that. But I know people have done that, and that's a really efficient way to collect a lot of seed if you're able to. They'll rubber band it, which prevents it from splitting open and the wind carrying all the seed away. But it can still naturally ripen, which is really nice. So if you're able to find the pods before they kind of start spewing the white fluff all over, which you see with that big yellow circle that I have, the picture on the right, that's butterfly milkweed. So the big yellow circled one, that's like an ideal time to pick that pod because the fluff is still contained and all the seeds are in a neat little row. Whereas the one on the right, they're all just kind of all over the place, but you can still collect that too. Anyway, take those pods when they're ready, stick them in a paper bag. Okay, you can put the whole pod in there, or you can just kind of run your finger through and collect all of it out and just drop it into a small paper bag. And you can cut the bottom corner of the little lunch bag with some scissors and drop some coins in the bag and close it and shake it. And that is going to cause those little brown seeds to separate. It's just an agitation. So those little brown seeds are going to separate from the white fluff, tip the bag to the side, and there's little brown seeds are going to fall out that little corner if you want to do that. Or you can just shake it all over in the brown paper bag, and then you know, with some coins in there, you know the little brown seeds are going to be on the bottom. Kind of a cool way to do it. Okay, so this next group that we're going to talk about are seeds who shatter, okay? And shattering seeds, that just means that they literally fall right off the plant when they're ripe, and something bumps into it. Something makes contact with it. So bottle brush grass, which is an oak savanna grass that grows around 4 or 5 feet tall, something like that. This is an example of a shattering grass. And I have a picture here, or a video that I'm going to play that shows how I take my hand and run it from the bottom of the seeds all the way to the top and just kind of collect them really easily. And you guys, if I was going to be collecting a lot of this bottle brush grass, I would have gloves on because this one is kind of sharp. All right, let me play the video. As easy as that. I love collecting this one because it's so simple. And the seed itself is not that entire structure that's in my hand right there. If you look at the picture on the right, the seed is circled in yellow, okay? It's this, the seed is not those long pointy structures. Those are called awns on a grass. Those just kind of help these seeds maybe stick to something and move around that way too. The seed is just the very bottom little kind of triangular section there that's circled. You don't have to even care about that. You don't have to find the individual little seed in order to be able to spread this seed around on your property. Okay, keep this simple. So I would literally just take that handful and throw it in a paper bag. Okay, I'm not worried about separating those awns from that little seed. All right, so another example of a seed that shatters are hazelnuts. And a lot of times people forget about our shrubs and the fact that they make seeds too. And okay, for one thing, everybody should have some hazelnuts in your yard because they're just absolutely gorgeous and I love them. And they do make cool little hazelnuts themselves, and this is what they look like. They're pretty green right now in August. And they look like, to the left there, that picture on the left, that's basically what they look like right now. They might be a little bit further advanced in some areas. And the nut is wrapped up in those like eyelash looking surroundings, which are called bracts. And how do you know when they're ready? Well, they're going to turn brown, like you can see up in the right-hand corner there. Those little eyelash things, the bracts, are going to start to be brown and kind of crumbly a little bit. All right. And you can peel those back to expose the nut itself. But I can tell you what happens in my yard with all of my hazelnuts. The squirrels take them around now, like in August, they taunt me and take them, and I find them like eaten and smashed on my deck. So what some people will do to get around the squirrels harvesting their entire hazelnut crop is they'll collect them when they're green and then spread them out in the sun on a tarp. I don't know, somehow they're protecting them, I guess, from the squirrels taking them right off the tarp, like a hazelnut buffet. But they'll let them ripen. So you need sun, you need air circulation, right, on a tarp or something. But you know what's happening in my yard? Honestly, the squirrels are also doing me a favor, is they're planting these, and I'm finding a few little baby hazelnuts here and there planted come up each year. It's pretty cool. I like that. If you want to get the actual hazelnuts out, you can use some pliers to help you crack into them too. Okay, so then moving on from the shattering group, we're going to talk now about plants that have what are technically called drupes. Whatever, it looks like berries. They're technically, the botanical term, they're not berries. They're drupes because they have a fleshy substance surrounding one seed, whereas a berry is going to have a bunch of seeds on the outside with the fleshy part on the inside. Okay, anyway, that doesn't matter for tonight's purposes. Here's an example. There's a bunch of different kinds of Solomon seal. This is starry false Solomon seal, and I'm starting to see all these red drupes out in the woods right now. It's really cool. They stick out, like you really see them. And if you look closely at that picture of the plant there, you'll notice some of those drupes are glossy bright red. And then some of the drupes are mottled and white looking. And when you touch those mottled whitish red pink ones, they're hard. Those are not ripe yet. Okay, those are not ready to be picked yet. When you touch those glossy dark red ones, they're a little bit smushy. All right, those are ready to be harvested. And here's the key with these seeds that have this fleshy, moist surround to them. You cannot let them dry out and you can't let them mold. So you have a couple choices with these. You can either direct sow them. All that means is you pick them off the plant and you throw them somewhere immediately, like onto bare ground somewhere. Okay, that's what direct sow means. Or if you want to hang on to them for a little bit, you can take those red ones and you can clean the flesh off of them if you want to. It's good to wear gloves if you're going to be cleaning these. Some people can react and get some skin irritation from the juices in these. I have never had that, but some people do. So you can clean the flesh off of them and store them in a plastic bag in the fridge or something for a few days, maybe a week you could get away with. Just the key is not to let them mold. Okay, so don't just throw them in a paper bag or a plastic bag and then close it up and leave them in there for 3 months. I want you to think about, here, I think I talk about this in the next one. Yeah, so this is Jack in the Pulpit. So you're an animal, you're walking through the woods and you're like, hey, that looks tasty. I'm going to eat that. And that's exactly what they want you to do. They want to be eaten. They want their seed to go through that animal's digestive tract, be exposed to that moisture and the acid, and who knows what else in the intestines and stomach of these animals. And then the animal is going to walk away and it's going to excrete that seed out eventually. So that seed benefits from being exposed to all those different conditions. the acid, the moisture, all those things. So it's hard for us to replicate that necessarily, you know, especially the acid part. So the green Jack in the Pulpit drupes, those are not ready. Okay. The red ones down on the bottom, those are ready. And I've literally stood in the woods with these and just kind of like picked them off one at a time, throw one over here, throw one over there, that kind of thing. Or you can just clip that entire little drupe segment, the whole thing. Again, keep it for a day or so and then throw them out somewhere else. This is what we have found to be the most effective method of dispersal with these, okay? If they don't go through that animal's digestive tract, they're still going to eventually germinate. It just might take an extra few years or something, you know? It just might take some extra time for that coating around that tiny little orange seed. You can see in that picture with the dime, that little tiny orange seed, that's the seed. Okay, it just might take some more time for that coating to break down. Okay, all right. So the next kind of seed that I want to talk about, everybody knows coneflowers, right? And you know, this is interesting because I was looking at some of my coneflowers the other day, and here in Northern Illinois, we're still in a drought situation. And these plants, our native plants, some of them are affected and are showing visible signs of being affected by the drought. Some of them maybe never bloomed. They came up, but maybe they never produced a flower. Some of them might have produced a flower, but only for a shorter than normal time period. So we've all been, and I was just looking at my coneflowers the other day, wondering, like, will these seeds be viable this year? Because some of my coneflowers, they like only bloomed for a couple days and they're weird and shrivelly looking right now in August, which is not normal. Okay. Normally these coneflowers would be like end of September or something where they would start to look like this. So we don't have the answer. I've been talking to all kinds of ecologists and botanists, and nobody has the answer of what's going to be viable and what's not. I can tell you that we're all going to be trying, that we're all still going to be collecting seeds to see, you know, and putting them out. You got to still continue trying. Okay, anyway, back to the coneflowers. So let's talk a little bit about the structure of a coneflower. These are a seed head that is important. It's helpful to wear gloves. They're very pokey. Now, do you see the triangle where it's a central cone with an arrow and then there's a green triangle? That's like the supporting structure that the seeds itself are attached to. And the seed for the coneflower is circled in yellow there. If you look at the bottom circled yellow one, it looks like a tooth to me. Like that's what it looks like. And then there's all the protruding spiky segments that come off of the seed itself. And everybody thinks that those pokey sections are the seeds. It's not, it's underneath that. So if you have coneflowers in your yard, it's pretty cool to clip one and take just like a steak knife or something and cut it in half crosswise, and you will be able to really see this structure. Guys, don't be afraid to like rip some of your plants apart, get to know them, you know, really like investigate them. It's pretty interesting when you start doing that. So the way you collect this seed is you literally just snip off the bottom of that entire cone seed head structure, take it, put it into a paper bag. Pretty simple. And you do it when it's dead and brown looking, all right, and dry and kind of crumbly. That's like the general theme with a lot of these fall plants that aren't those drupes. Okay, wear gloves, use pliers to rip those seeds out. Those seeds can be kind of difficult to dislodge. But I can tell you, my mom just texted me this morning and she was like, when should I start collecting my coneflower? Because the finches are already all over them. And I'm like, well, it's pretty early to be collecting coneflowers. I would just wait a little bit and let the finches have some of them. So you can use pliers to pull those seeds out. I'll talk more about processing. These are some that are kind of difficult to process. And remember, that just means removing all the extraneous parts from the seed itself. So you can use pliers to rip those out. People will put these in like a canvas bag and stomp on them to dislodge the seeds. They call it the coneflower stomp. So there's all different ways. There's all different ways you can deal with these. Or if you run out of time, you can literally just keep that cone head, the whole thing inside a paper bag. And next winter, just throw the whole seed head out there. If you run out of time and you're like, I don't have time to process this, that's okay. You can do that. The seeds are still out there. All right. These crumbly cone heads, as we see here with this purple prairie clover, this crumbly conehead group, this is my favorite group to collect because they're so soft and delightful. I absolutely love these. It's like a mini fuzzy sweater when you pull them off and they're ripe. They're lovely. So the way you collect these seeds is not when it's a purple flower like that. But when the seed head is kind of gray, and sometimes you don't necessarily go totally by color, but you can go by feel. So you just kind of put your hand at the bottom of that seed structure and run your fingers upwards. And when it super easily dislodges in your hand, they're ready to collect. If you meet resistance when you pull up on it, don't collect it. Okay, so these make it real easy to figure out. The seed itself, you can see in that picture there down by the dime, are those little white things. They're inside the gray fuzzy hull. You don't have to remove that like gray fuzzy part. You don't have to do any of that. Okay, I literally just like collect these, throw it in a paper bag, and then eventually it just all gets thrown outside the way it is. Okay, you don't have to worry about removing anything from these. Okay, so this next group are what are known as beaks. And if you look at it, especially that picture where it's in my hand and it's got all the little seeds scattered in my hand, you see the little, it looks like a beak when you look at it. This example are foxglove beard tongues or penstemons. These you collect when the brown pods, the pods are going to turn brown when they start to split open. Okay, they're just going to start to split open a little bit. You know, I've collected some of them before they split open too. It's all right. It's okay. And what I'll do if they haven't split open yet, you can put them in like, I've used a Ziploc bag. You can use something else too. And take the flat part of a meat mallet and just bash on them. And that gets those beaks to open. They're surprisingly very hard. Like if I took my thumbnail and tried to open them before they were open, I might not be able to do it. So it's easiest if you wait until those little pods or beaks kind of break open. And that'll probably, usually the rule of thumb for most plants is that the seeds are going to be ripe about a month after the flowers have faded. Okay. So that's generally going to be late summer, early fall for these penstemon. These pods smell weird. And so if you keep them in a closed like paper bag or something, just know that you're going to smell something weird and it's going to be these pods. Okay. Okay. Moving on. Oh, wild bergamot. I love these. So these are shakers. These are in the shaker group. And all that means is that when you shake these, like flip them upside down in your hand and shake them and kind of squeeze them, the seeds are dislodged. They like fall out of those tiny little tubes, which you could see in the brown seed heads there. All those tiny tubes, they all contain a seed. All right. So those are called the calyx, those tubes. These I'm obsessed with because they smell so good. Those seed heads smell amazing all through the winter. It's a really cool experience to walk through your gardens or something and pull a seed head off and squeeze it and smell it. It's like this minty kind of citrus smell almost. So I collect these by, you can either directly pull that brown seed head off with your hand, or you can take scissors. That makes it easier. And just snip right below and collect, you know, approximately 30% of what you see there, throw it in a paper bag. I think you can see the theme here, paper bag. Okay. And you just put the whole seed head in there and you're not worrying about like, I don't know. I just throw the entire seed head out because those seeds are very tiny. If you look at that picture there with the ruler, those are extremely small seeds. So those are going to get lost real easy. I just take that whole seed head and just kind of chuck it out wherever I want those to grow. Okay, Joe Pye weed. This is an example of fluffy seeds. And these are different from the milkweeds in that they are not contained inside a pod. So there's a bunch of plants that are going to be like this, that when those seeds are ripe and ready to be collected, they develop fluff. And they're just kind of exposed. Okay. So Joe Pye weed, the asters, the goldenrods, they all do this. Well, and what I do with these is
go for a test, but
if you could mute yourself, that'd be cool. Who's ever not muted? Thank you. If what I do with these Joe Pies is just clip at the very base where all of those stems come together and meet the central stem. I just clip and take that entire seed head at the top there and very carefully invert it seeds down into my paper bag. And I'll use larger paper bags for these because these are substantial seed heads. They're pretty big. And I'll collect, you know, a bunch of the Joe Pye and just keep putting it into my bag. And I don't worry about separating the seed from the fluff. Okay. For me, what I do is I just make a whole mix of like savanna species or prairie species, whatever. I just kind of mix them all together and throw them all out there. If you want to keep the species separated, you can do that too and be very specific about it. No problem at all. Okay. And if you're worried about the seeds blowing away after you sow them, you can just step on them. Like when you throw them on the ground or something, literally just step on them, especially if it's in the snow. That's going to help kind of work them down a little bit. All right, seeds who hitchhike. Now, there aren't very many of these in most gardens, but out in some bigger, larger areas, like I know I have these in my larger kind of lawn prairie type quarter acre of an area. Some of these are pretty cool. And it's really a genius dispersal method if you think about it, like sticking to something. So this Desmodium or tick trefoil here is an example. And if you look in that upper left corner, you can see how it's really fuzzy. You guys, I have like lost a shirt to just being completely covered in these seeds. They stick very effectively and they've got those they're pods. These are here. You can see there's 3 little individual seeds that are found in each little tiny compartment there. The entire seed or pod is called the lament, with 1 little individual seed in each tiny compartment there. You don't have to worry about, you know, taking the seeds out from inside that hull. You don't need to worry about that. You don't have to get that specific. Okay, it doesn't have to be super time consuming. How do you know when to collect them? When they start sticking to you. When they're sticky, that's when you collect them. So those beautiful pink flowers will be faded away. Like these are pretty sticky right now. And then it's just left with that seed pod that's going to stick to you, to deer fur, to your dogs, to all kinds of things. All right, these are super cool. Ballistic seeds, or seeds that have some sort of catapulting mechanism inside of them. And that's how their seeds distribute when they are ripe and ready to grow, to just be moved around and to grow. Okay. So there's all kinds of seeds that do this. This is jewelweed, this picture that you see right here. And you can, right now, this is what the jewelweed can look like. And I don't know, I looked at some jewelweed yesterday and it wasn't ready yet to do this. Let me show you this video. This is my daughter. This was last year we made this video. There, you can see in your little finger there. Here, I'll play it again. Touches it.
I had no picture, honey. I lost the picture.
Oh, God. Okay, but go ahead and turn off your sound. Whoever voice I just heard, make sure you're muted. So you can see the little catapulting mechanism there is really cool. And those tiny little dark things are the seeds. And the catapult or the ballistic little parts, they're only going to work when those seeds are ripe, not before. So jewelweed does that. Wild geranium in the woods, that does that too in like June or so. Violets do this. Toothwort does it. And then there's a prairie species that does it called prairie phlox or Phlox pilosa. So there's a few examples from different habitats that utilize this mechanism, and some of them can fling up to 30 feet away, which is insane. Now, if you think about it, you're probably like, how the heck am I supposed to harvest these? Because it's hard. You have to figure out the ripening sequence for one thing and know, okay, the flowers are going to start fading. So I can either try to get them right before they're going to ballistically explode and keep them inside a bag so that they'll explode inside the bag. I've seen some people who cover the seed heads before they explode. They cover them with these tiny little beautiful mesh bags. They're so cute. And so they'll collect them, and like the little bag like ties around the stem. So you can collect them that way too. These ballistic seeds need to either be sowed, direct sowed, so sowed right away. That means you just fling them on the ground right away, or you only hold them in the fridge in a sealed like paper or mesh bag for a day or two. They're not going to store for a really long time, okay, in your refrigerator. I like to, with this whole like seed collection thing, I like to really just try to mimic what would happen in nature, okay? So like with these seeds would contact the ground immediately when they are ripe. So you know what? To me, that makes the most sense. We are going to let them touch the ground and direct sow them right away. Okay, we're going to play a game. We're going to test your newfound knowledge about seeds. Here's the game. It's called Ready or Not. And I'm going to show you a series of side-by-side pictures of seed heads from the same species. And one of them is going to be labeled number 1. The other one's number 2. You need to decide from looking at them which is ready to be harvested and which one is not ready to be harvested. You don't need to put your answers in the chat. Just like say the answer to yourself. I'm not going to be able to hear you. That's fine. I will tell you which one is correct. Okay, here we go. All right, ready or not?
2 is ready. 2.
Oh, okay, remember you can mute yourself. You don't need to, I don't need to hear it. All right, number 1 on the left and number 2 on the right. I'm going to give you a second to look at it. And number 2 is ready to be collected. So how do we know that? We could see the white fuzz sticking out. This is one of those crumbly cone heads, like the purple prairie clover I showed you, where I said it's like collecting a delightful little sweater. When you pull it off, it's so soft and fuzzy. You can see that the white fuzz is starting to be developed, and the seeds are kind of brown looking too, as opposed to the one on the left that's cupped in my hand, number 1, that's really green looking. And when I pull up on that, that is not going to easily dislodge at all. All right. Here's the thing, you guys. These 2 pictures taken side by side, right next to each other. This happens all the time in nature. All right. Where some plants just ripen quicker than others. And these are literally like 2 feet apart from each other. Okay. So I don't have like an exact answer of why this happens. But to me, it kind of makes sense from like a plant survival standpoint, because maybe the conditions aren't totally ready yet for number 2 to survive those seeds. So number 1, which will be a little bit later, maybe those will have a better chance of survival. Who knows? I don't know. That's just my hypothesis. I don't know if that's right, but it makes sense to me. So don't be freaked out. Don't be like, hey, number 2 is ready though, and I'm standing here in my garden. Why is this? Why is one ready and one isn't? Totally normal for that to happen. Okay, here we go. Back with our cone flowers. Number 1 on the right and number 1 on the left, number 2 on the right. Which one do we think is ready to be harvested? Number 1 on the left. Very good. The one that's like really dark brown and looks dead and kind of dry, right? Yes, very good. Number 2 there on the right, if you notice, the center cone section, that still has like color in it. It's yellow and it's green, and it's indicating that this plant is still growing, all right? Those seeds are not done developing yet. Definitely not ready to be harvested. It even still has pink, like those little ray florets, whatever, they look like petals hanging off of them. They even still have that attached to it, and they have color. And that stem is bright green too. All right, this one's a little bit trickier. Which one is ready? Which one is not ready? Number 1 on the left, number 2 on the right. This golden Alexander
Number 1
here. Number 1 on the left is the ready one. Now this, you got to look pretty close. 1 on the left, these are a shattering species. So this is one where like you touch it, and when they're ready, they just fall. They just like fall right into your hand. This golden Alexander on the left, dark brown. Can you see how it looks really dark brown? It looks, to me, it kind of looks dry almost. Number 2 on the right, I see a lot of green, and I see a lot of like red color. And if you were able to touch these 2, you would really start to understand. Number 2, when you kind of squeeze that stem, it still feels really almost moist and spongy. number one on the left, when you squeeze that, it's just really dry and brittle. Okay, final exam. No, it's not really, but I'm going to show you 2 videos of these prairie dock seed heads. And I want you to determine from the video and what's happening, which one is ready to be collected. Because these, you can't tell just by looking at it. You're forced to touch it. All right, so let me play the video on the left, number 1. Here's what this seed head does from the prairie dock. When I just kind of run my thumb over it. And then let's look at the video on the right, what happens. Okay, which one do we think it is?
Left
Video on the left. Yes, video on the left. Very good. Video on the left. I mean, it makes sense, right? When you touch it and you run your thumb over it and those seeds just kind of crumble out into your hand. There you go. Now it's kind of cool to figure out, wait, what is the actual seed though? There's all kinds of stuff falling out. And in my hand, you can see in my hand, there's a bunch of different structures. And the picture on the lower right there with the big yellow circle, that it almost looks like a sunflower seed. It's not, but those are the actual seed structures. Okay, not those long skinny things, but it almost looks like a little sunflower seed. Those are the actual seed structures. Okay, and these again, I would just take them and put them in a paper bag. All right. So I've talked to you a lot about paper bags tonight. That is obviously one of my favorite methods of storage. Paper over plastic, because plastic holds moisture inside and encourages molding, basically. These end up just all over my house, on my kitchen counter, next to apparently a bottle of Mchale, whatever. So what I've started doing in the last few years is like consolidating my little mini seed bags with, when I want to separate species, like I'll keep all the prairie smoke in there or all the butterfly weed in this one, whatever. I'll just kind of shove a bunch of them inside one of those big landscaping waste bags and leave it open. Okay, leave everything open so it can all breathe. Keep it in a place where rodents are not going to get to it. All right, so if you've got a bunch of mice in your garage, don't keep it in your garage. If there's a ton of mice in your barn, don't keep it in there. All right, find a place in your house where mice won't eat it, because this is literally like Thanksgiving for rodents. What else? Open air circulation, whatever. You might get some insects coming out of these seeds. Just embrace it. It's not a huge deal. Like I found that little tiny guy on top of my dryer there. I don't know. If that's going to bother you, then don't keep these seeds in a place where the insects are going to bother you. Okay. All right. So processing. I talk a lot about like just fling your seeds out there. So what I'll do, so I've got all these little seeds collected in all these bags, right? What do you do then with those seeds? So you can process them. Remember what that means, literally removing the seed structure itself from the surrounding plant material. You do not have, this is not an exact science. This is not like precise measurement happening. I'm going to show you this video. This is my daughter again, helping me over the winter. And we literally just like throw a tarp down in the living room, turn Netflix on. I've got some buckets set up and we just use our hands. Okay. Sometimes we wear gloves. Gloves are generally a good thing. Sometimes we don't, whatever. And here, I'll show you this video. This is Tess processing cream gentian, okay, which is that beautiful white flower down there, which is blooming right now. So beautiful. And this is literally what's involved with it. She's just taking that, the dry, crumbly section of the seed head and like smushing it in her fingers, and all the tiny, these seeds are extremely tiny. They just kind of flow out into the bottom of the bucket. Then we are not, see how she still has plant material in her hand. We are not throwing that away. Okay. That leftover plant material, there's probably seeds still in there that we're just missing. There could be some cool bugs in there too. Who knows? I'm keeping that. I have another bucket where I'm putting that leftover plant material or chaff. I'm putting that in there. And guess what? I'm throwing that outside eventually into my seeding area. I'm putting that out there with it too. It's like free organic material. Why would you not put that out there? Okay. All right. So you can get as involved with this processing as you want to. If you're like, you know what? All of these seeds are just going to stay attached to the cone section, or these gentian seeds are just going to stay inside this, and I'm literally just going to throw the whole thing outside. Fine, you can do that. Sometimes I get to the point in the winter where I'm just over it, and that's what I do. Not a big deal. The seeds are still making it out there. They just might take an extra few years to actually show up and grow. Who knows? There's all kinds of tools around your house that you can use. Tweezers, pliers, meat mallet, rolling pin, so many different things that you can use to actually remove the surrounding plant material from the seed itself. And this is just super fun to do with kids, even if it's like they only do it for 5 minutes. Who cares? This is biology. You know, this is them learning about it, and you too. All right, so I talked about how you can keep individual species separated from each other if you want to. I like to do it in location. So I know, okay, these seeds, I'm going to want them to go in this prairie garden, or this out in my woods. These species, I want them out in my woods. And then I'll just process them all into the same bucket. It simplifies it for me. So like this whole little section here in this whole container sitting on my dining room table, those seeds have all been processed and they're ready to go out wherever, I don't know, the prairie or wherever these were intended for. And you could see up in the top there by like the actual spoon, I did kind of mix them around. I see some gentian or something up there that I just, whatever, threw the entire seed head in there. I was done with that one. Whatever. I didn't feel like processing that one. All right. So I talked a lot tonight about just throwing your seeds out there. What do I mean by that? So I'm talking about sowing your seeds. So these seeds who you've collected from July, generally, this is how it goes. July onwards, okay? July through, say, November. Those seeds generally can be held and stored in a paper bag somewhere with good air circulation. Then you can sow them. That literally just means throw them on the ground. You can sow them anytime in the fall or winter, okay? Now there's a few exceptions, like those ballistic seeds that we talked about, the droops, right? Those berry type seeds, those ones that I said do better with direct sowing. The majority of them though, you can hang on to them, okay? And you guys, at the end of my resource slide, I have a link for a seed collecting guide through the Field Museum that you can download. And it's literally every native plant species in the Chicago area. And so it's going to be applicable to a lot of the Midwest, and exactly how to collect it, when to collect it, and should I direct sow it, or is it fine to store it? Okay, so you'll have this ability to look this up for every single plant. All right, so sowing, you just grab your your seeds that maybe you've processed, or maybe there's still the seed heads, who knows. I like to do this on top of the snow. You don't have to do it on top of the snow. I like to do it on top of the snow because I could see where I've thrown my seeds then. I like to use a sled, take all your stuff out with you, including all that chaff, all the extra plant material that you saved in a different bucket. And then you're literally going to walk around and distribute it on top of the snow or on top of the ground, whatever, with bare hands or gloves, whatever. You don't need any kind of machine to do this. You literally just need your hands and a bucket. Now, few tips. I like to, if it's not obvious, I like to flag the area before it snows where I'm going to want to throw these seeds. And then I like to split my seed into, could be 4 buckets, could be 8 buckets, depends on how big the area is, so that I don't throw all my seed accidentally in one area. I want to try to distribute it as equally as I can. And I try my best to walk in just kind of like a grid pattern, back and forth, very slowly, just distributing the seed on top of the snow. Our native seeds, a lot of them need what's called stratification, or a cold period, in order for them to be able to break dormancy. And this totally makes sense if you think about it. Like, how did these seeds spread around before there were people here to physically collect them and move them? Nature did it, right? They blew around, they stuck to animals, they just directly fell on the ground, whatever their method was. And then they worked their way down through the snow into cracks in the soil where they froze and they thawed and they froze and they thawed, potentially for years down in the soil before they would break down that code enough to break germination and start to grow. Okay. And it all depends on the species of the seed, of how quickly are they going to germinate. It also depends on your specific site conditions. So seeds require a lot of patience, all right? And in your area where you're seeding, it's just really important that you never let weeds make seeds in that area. That makes sense, right? You don't need any competing weed seeds in there. That's a whole other program, but whatever. Just like mow those weeds down before they make seeds, okay? Okay, and you know what? If you're like, but I have seed left from last year, or like 2019, I just found the seed that I had collected, whatever. Can I throw it out there? Can I sow it? Yeah, just sow it. Like, what's it gonna hurt? Some seed you can save for longer than a year. Some you can't. Okay. We're going to go really quickly through some of these early spring blooming wildflowers, like the bloodroot here. These, everybody forgets about these, okay? Because you only pay attention to them when they're blooming, and then people forget. But don't forget about them. Check out these seed pods. So here's the seed pod from bloodroot. Notice the dark chestnut seeds with the little white structure attached to it. That's called an elaiosome. It's like ant candy, all right? And ants take these, they want to eat that elaiosome. So they take the whole seed, they go down into their tunnels in the ground, they eat the elaiosome, discard the seed in a waste chamber with like dead ant bodies, and then they grow. It's like the perfect fertilizer. All of these spring plants I'm going to show you require direct sowing. Don't hold on to these and store them in your refrigerator. You literally could just take one of these pods and start flinging the seeds around. All right, it's super fun. Same with these little spring beauties. This is a beak. If you look at it on the right there, you can see the beak. Those will fall out. Those seeds will fall out when they're ready. They have an elaiosome attached to them too. Okay, these are super tiny. Usually these seeds are going to be developed and ripe about a month after those blooms fade. Ginger, this is a little tricky, this one, of when to find. Is it ready? You need to take, because it still has the flower structure, but it's going to be faded in color and it's going to be mushy when they're ready to be collected. And it's the back side of the flower structure. You just kind of split it open with your thumbnail and you'll find those dark chestnut seeds. Direct sow them, okay? Take them and put them in different areas in your yard. Prairie Smoke, everybody should have Prairie Smoke. When they start to smoke, develop this like white fluffy seeds and you pull on one individual piece of fluff and the seed easily dislodges. You could see it in the picture there, the tiny, tiny seed. When it easily dislodges, it's ready to be collected. All right, I just take a bunch of it and then direct sow these. You can hold on to them for a few days if you want to, but then direct sow them. All right. Become a member of your local land trust. Maybe they do a fall seed collecting event like we do for our members. Get to collect some seed on our sites and keep it for yourself, or we use it on our restoration sites. It's a great way, okay, to be able to share these experiences and these seeds with each other. And here we go with a bunch of resources. That one I was talking to you about, that field guide, Liz said she was going to email that to you too, or put it in the chat or something. That's the Field Museum Guide to Seed Heads of Common Native Plants of the tallgrass region. That is a mouthful. It's absolutely excellent. It's split up by habitat. Like, I can't even tell you what a creation this is. And it's in plain language that's easy to understand for anybody. Okay. Yes, you're going to get this recording, so I am not going to read all these resources to you. All right, Peggy, with that, here we go. I know I went over a little bit.
Yes, we have another program coming up in September, on September 23rd, again, an evening program. And that is going to be a wonderful program of native plants through the seasons. So we sometimes think of just the spring plants or just the summer plants, but this one is going to show you the variety that's available to go from early spring to late fall. And it too will be sponsored by the Barrington Area Library. And our presenters are Debbie Grote and Carol Rice. So please join us again in another month.